So we're diving into Radical Candor, huh? Ready to ditch those dusty management books? This one's different.
It's not just another book about being the cool boss, though. It's like Kim Scott gets how important truly caring and like really challenging your team are. They're tied together.
Okay, gotta admit, Radical Candor sounds kind of intense. It's caring personally, but also like directly challenging people, right?
Yeah.
Seems simple, but Scott says even big-time leaders struggle with it. Why is it so hard?
It's a balance, right? Think of it like walking a tightrope. On one side, you've got ruinous empathy. That's where you avoid the tough conversations to, spare feelings.
But that ends up backfiring, doesn't it?
Totally. It's like you think you're being nice, but it hurts the team long term. No growth, and the resentment builds.
And on the other side of that tightrope, we've got obnoxious aggression, basically just being a jerk.
Exactly. Neither extreme works, she says. It's all about finding that middle ground. Challenge them, but care about them as people, too.
And she uses examples from her own career, right? Google, Apple, DocBall. Those are some pretty intense workplaces to be figuring this stuff out.
Oh, yeah, and she talks about her own mess-ups, which is refreshing. Like, there's this story where she's presenting to the Google founders, thinks it went amazing, then Sheryl Sandberg pulls her aside.
Wait, what? Sheryl Sandberg?
Yeah, to talk about how many times she said,
Oh my gosh, I would die.
Right. But it's a perfect example of how even little things we don't even think about can, like, undermine how people see us.
Totally. Most people wouldn't even notice saying a few times. It's like, what's the big deal?
Exactly. But that direct feedback, even if it seems small, it's powerful, helps you see those blind spots.
Speaking of feedback,
Mm.
this reminds me of that story Kim tells about dog poop. Hilarious, but also kind of deep. You know the one.
Oh, yeah, at a party, right? Someone's dog is, and she actually says something.
Yeah, it's a perfect example of how even with strangers, clear feedback is better than just like letting it slide.
Totally. It's not about being mean. It's about helping them course correct.
Changed how I think about feedback, honestly. Okay, on to building teams. This is where Scott blew my mind. Rock stars and superstars. Break those down for us.
Right. So your rock stars, they're your steady folks, love what they do, get amazing at it. They're the ones who become the experts, and they love mentoring others,
They're the foundation of any solid team. But then you need those superstars too, right? Always pushing the limits, ready for the next challenge.
Exactly. They live for growth. But here's the key. Not everyone's driven by the same stuff. And if you mistake a rock star for a, underperforming superstar or vice versa, you're going to have a problem.
That's where so many managers get it wrong. Assuming everyone wants to climb the ladder, end up pushing people in the wrong direction.
Right. Figuring out what motivates each person, what makes them tick, that's how you build a team that really flies.
This is already giving me so much to think about. Okay, skip level meetings. Game changer for me.
It's so simple, but so effective. It's like, imagine talking to your team's team. Not to micromanage, but to get a feel for what's really going on.
And you're not just listening in, you're asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
What's working, what's not, what are they excited about?
Sends a message about being open and transparent. Done right, you can uncover hidden problems, really understand the team dynamics.
Okay, last one for this part. Got to talk about the GSD wheel. Sounds like, I don't know, some corporate buzzword, but it's actually super helpful.
Get stuff done, right? It's about moving away from that old boss tells everyone what to do thing and making it more collaborative.
Yeah, but what does that actually look like day to day? Paint us a picture.
So say you've got a big project, yeah. Instead of just barking orders, the GSD wheel says, first you listen, really listen. Make sure everyone feels heard. Then you make sure everyone's crystal clear on the goals, the roles, all that.
That's where so many teams mess up. Skipping that step leads to so much confusion and frustration down the line.
100%. Then comes the debate. Encourage people to really go at it, challenge assumptions, throw out those crazy ideas.
Love that. Making it safe for people to actually speak their minds.
Yeah.
But it's not just about talking forever, right? At some point, you got to make a decision.
Absolutely. And once you do, then you move into persuasion. Not forcing people to agree, but getting them on board, helping them understand the why.
It's like getting buy-in, making it a shared thing.
And lastly, you've got learning. Take the time to figure out what went well, what could have been better, how to improve next time.
It's all about learning and growing, not just pointing fingers when things go wrong.
Yeah.
Much better approach.
Right. It's embracing the mistakes, using them to get better, both individually and as a team. So important in today's world. That GSD wheel, it all comes back to that human side of things, Without that caring, it's easy to fall into those like ruinous empathy or obnoxious aggression traps we talked about.
It's so true. Like that saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, or
Uh-huh.
something like that.
Right. And the thing is, we've all messed up with this stuff. I know I have, even with the best intentions.
Oh, for sure. I remember this one time I was managing this team, and there was this guy constantly missing deadlines.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was a problem,
Yeah.
impacting everyone, but I kept making excuses for him.
What kind of excuses?
The usual, oh, he's swamped or he's still learning, the classics. But really, I was just avoiding that tough conversation. Didn't want to hurt his feelings, mess up our relationship.
And what happened?
It got worse, of course. The rest of the team was getting resentful, and his work actually started slipping because he wasn't getting the feedback he needed.
Classic case of ruinous empathy backfiring. You think you're being nice, but it's actually worse.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And the funny thing is, when I finally talked to him, it was a relief for both of us. He admitted it was a problem. We figured out a solution together.
See, that's radical candor working. Done right. It actually makes relationships stronger, even when the conversations are hard.
So for our listener who's like stuck in that ruinous empathy trap or maybe leaning towards obnoxious aggression,
Hmm.
how do they find that sweet spot?
Well, Scott talks about framing feedback in a way that's both clear and kind. Like instead of saying, you're always late, try, hey, I've noticed your reports have been coming in late and it's making it tough for everyone to stay on track. What's going on?
So much better. It's not blaming. It's like problem solving together.
Exactly. And be specific. Give examples. Instead of, your communication's bad, try, in that last meeting, you cut Sarah off a few times. Everyone needs to feel heard, Can we work on that?
Super helpful tips. I'm writing these down. But it's not just about giving feedback. It's getting it too, right?
Huge. And way harder, I think, when you're the boss.
Totally. It's easy to get defensive when you're being criticized, even if they mean well.
Scott talks about creating a culture where feedback is a good thing, not a personal attack. Shifting your mindset from, I need to defend myself, to, what can I learn from this?
Easier said than done, right? It takes like serious self-awareness to not take that stuff personally.
For sure. It's a skill you got to practice. One thing she suggests is actually asking your team for feedback. What could I be doing better? What do you wish I'd stop doing? Stuff like that.
I love that. It shows you're open to it, that you want to improve,
Yeah.
and it sets the tone for the whole team. If the boss can be vulnerable, ask for feedback.
Exactly. It gives everyone permission to do the same. And don't just ask, actually do something with it. If someone takes the time to give you feedback, acknowledge it. Thank them.
Yeah. Nothing worse than feeling like your feedback just disappears into a black hole.
Totally kills the vibe. Doesn't mean you have to agree with everything, but at least hear them out, explain your thinking if you decide not to act on it.
It's about closing the loop,
Mhm.
making sure they feel heard. Like their feedback matters, even if you don't agree with it.
Talking about feedback, that whole abrasive trap thing really got to me. You know how women get labeled abrasive or bossy for stuff that's just seen as assertive in a man?
Ugh, tell me about it. It's infuriating. You're just trying to be direct, and suddenly you're the bad guy.
Exactly. And Scott talks about how this makes it so hard for women to give feedback, especially to men. Trying to be direct, but also likable, it's like this impossible tightrope.
It's like you're screwed either way. Too direct, you're a witch. Too soft, no one listens. Exhausting.
And she calls it out, which I appreciate. Be aware of it, call it out when you see it, and find ways to navigate it.
Okay, but how? Besides, burning down the patriarchy, which is always an option.
Right. She talks about being really mindful of your tone, your language, especially with men, and back up your feedback with solid examples, not just vague statements.
That's smart. It's harder to dismiss you as emotional when you've got the receipts.
Right. And find allies, mentors, men and women who've got your back who can help you navigate that stuff.
And it's not just on women to fix this, right? Guys got to step up too.
100%. Scott's like, men, be aware of your own biases, support the women on your team, amplify their voices, and call out that double standard when you see it.
Yes. We need everyone on board to make a difference.
It's about creating that environment where everyone feels safe, giving and getting feedback, no matter who they are.
So we've talked about that balance.
Yeah.
Caring and challenging. But what about when, even if you're doing everything right, someone's just not cutting it?
The dreaded performance conversation. Nobody's favorite, but Scott's got some good advice for making it less awful.
Because let's be real, those are the worst. Stressful for everyone involved.
Totally. But she's like, it's part of the job. Being a good leader means having those hard conversations. And don't wait.
Feedback delayed is feedback denied, something like that.
Exactly. The longer you wait, the worse it gets. Rip the Band-Aid off, even if it's uncomfortable.
And if you can, do it in person, right?
Way better. So much gets lost over email or whatever. You want to be there, read their body language, adjust your approach as needed.
It shows you care enough to have a real conversation face to face.
For sure. And Scott gives this framework, HHIPP. Stands for humble, helpful, immediate, in person, and don't personalize.
Love a good acronym. Break it down for us.
Okay, humble. Go in ready to listen, knowing you don't have all the answers. You might even be wrong. Come from a place of curiosity, not judgment.
Create that safe space for them to talk without feeling attacked.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then helpful. Focus on their growth, not on punishing them.
Yeah.
Be a coach, not a critic.
Immediate. That's pretty self-explanatory, right?
Right. Deal with it now, not later, and not just once. Be consistent. One conversation won't fix everything.
Okay, in person, we talked about that. What about don't personalize?
So important. Separate the person from the problem. Don't say, you're lazy. Say, hey, I've noticed you're not meeting deadlines. What's up?
Focus on the what, not the who.
Exactly. Be descriptive, not judgy. Scott talks about using I statements instead of you statements, I've noticed, not you're always.
Less accusatory, more about working together.
Right. And remember, even when it's tough feedback, come from a good place. You're trying to help them grow, not tear them down.
And sometimes that growth means helping them realize they're not in the right role. Maybe they'd be happier somewhere else.
Totally. That's where those career conversations come in. Figure out if there's a mismatch between their skills, their passions, and their current job.
And give them space to explore other options, inside or outside the company.
Exactly. And if it does mean they gotta go, handle it with respect and honesty. Be upfront about why. Help them through it.
It's still an emotional thing, even if it's a business decision. Be kind.
And look, sometimes, even after all that, it's just not the right fit. And that's okay. Not everyone's meant to be on every team.
Does it mean anyone failed?
Nope. Just gotta find the right fit for everyone. And yes, sometimes that means letting someone go.
But if you've built that foundation of radical candor, those conversations, while still hard, are a little less rough.
For sure. It's about building a culture of respect, even when things don't work out.
It's kind of cool how Scott brings it all back to that human-to-human thing, even when it's like tough decisions and stuff.
Yeah, it's remembering we're all just people out here doing our best. And sometimes your best just isn't the right fit for that job, that company. And that's okay.
It's nice to hear that because it's so easy to get caught up in the performance, the numbers.
Totally. But there's a whole person behind those numbers with feelings and everything.
Right. So we've covered a lot. Feedback, tough convos. But Scott also talks about building a team culture where this radical candor can actually work. Where do you even start with that?
It starts at the top, you
Yeah.
know? A leader's got to walk the walk. You want honesty and openness. You got to be open and honest yourself first.
Lead by example, right?
Exactly. And not just being honest, being a little vulnerable too. It's okay to not have all the answers, to ask for help, even admit when you screw up.
That's tough for some leaders, though, right? Feeling like they got to have it all figured out.
Oh, for sure. But honestly, being able to say, I don't know, or I messed up, it makes you more human. People relate to that. And it lets them be more real too.
Creates that safety to be yourself, flaws and all. Love it.
Yeah.
So how do you actually build that kind of culture? Didn't Scott talk about setting clear expectations for feedback?
Totally. Talk to your team. What does radical candor actually look like for us? What's helpful feedback? What's not? How do we do this respectfully?
Lay down the ground rules, make sure everyone's on the same page.
Yep. And it's not enough to just say it. You got to live it. See someone giving crappy feedback, call it out.
Hold each other accountable.
Exactly. And come up with your own little rituals, you know, like a weekly shout out where everyone shares positive feedback, or a monthly check-in to reflect, figure out what to improve.
Those are good ideas. That shout-out thing is so simple but effective.
Right. Focus on the good stuff. Celebrate each other.
And those regular check-ins are huge. Gives you dedicated time to actually pause and reflect as a team.
It's how you build that culture of continuous improvement, always learning, always growing.
So we talked about building the right culture, tracking your activities, visualizing your workflow. Yeah, and this is a lot.
It is a lot. But it all comes back to one thing, really. Radical candor is about showing up authentically, being a little vulnerable, truly connecting with the people around you.
And that's something we should all be aiming for, right?
100%. So to everyone listening, keep those conversations going, keep that feedback flowing, and keep being awesome humans.
And keep diving deep with us.
Until next time.